Welcome to the Backlash at Backlash.com. My name is Rod Van Mecklin, and in this video I'm going to read from my 1992 article about wages for housework. And this is like take 812, so hopefully I'll get it down this time. Quoting from Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique, Parkinson's law can easily be reformulated for the American housewife. Housewifery expands to fill the time available. 1992, Bellevue, Washington. Feminists judge the male sense of household cleanliness by the standards of the feminine mystique. This becomes obvious when we compare one of Cher Height's complaints against men made in 1987 to an observation Betty Friedan made in 1963. Quoting from Cher Height, a recent study found that for every 2 hours a man puts in on domestic chores, a woman puts in 5. Next, from Betty Friedan, toying with the question, how can 1 hour of housework expand to fill 6 hours, same house, same work, same wife, I came back to the basic paradox of the feminine mystique, that it emerged to glorify woman's role as housewife at the very moment when the barriers to her full participation in society were lowered. Lowered by whom? By men. That was in 1963. Before the feminists started to assault men. With some justification, therefore, we might now suggest that, while most men are more casual housekeepers, they're also more efficient. Most men are more casual about housework because we learn different priorities and different ideals. Women get their ideas of the ideal house from magazines like Better Homes and Gardens. Note, keep in mind I wrote this back in the 1990s and 80s. In such magazines, dust and dirty glasses fairly shriek by their absence. But men seldom read clutter-free magazines. Male-oriented periodicals are filled with megabytes, wrenches, chips, sheet metal, plywood, screws and pistons, and video games. They read what they know from their common male experience will improve their chances of attracting a mate, at least we did back then. In the magazines men read, immaculate is more likely to refer to a souped-up car or a really hot computer than a man's space. The standard of the feminine mystique was an artificial one set by manufacturers of household products more than 40 years ago. Well, actually, this would be now more than 60 years ago. The women's movement was supposed to free women from this, yet that men don't live up to the standard is a pounded to death theme in the feminist assault on men. Why? Are women inherently better housekeepers than men? Betty Friedan, the woman generally credited with starting the modern feminist movement, second wave feminism, might not agree. Like the cowboy movie hero who rides off into the sunset with his 6-shooter on his hip, an image that has influenced the character development of young men for decades, the meticulous mom is a media myth promulgated by advertisers to sell soap, wax, detergent, vacuum cleaners, and mops. Quoting from Betty Friedan, since the balanced homemaker represents the market with the greatest future potential, it would be to the advantage of the appliance manufacturer to make more and more women aware of the desirability of belonging to this group. Educate them through advertising that it is possible to have outside interests and become alert to wider intellectual influences without becoming a career woman. The art of good homemaking should be the goal of every normal woman. That was from Betty Friedan, The Feminine Mystique. Women's standards of good housekeeping didn't spring only from a female tradition, but out of an advertising campaigns that were aimed at women. This standard has now become a part of the mainstream female ideology, and feminists are accommodating it to the extent it allows them to bash men. Why should they do this? Why would feminists want to emphasize how men don't live up to the standards of a mystique feminists argue generally oppresses women? Do they want to force women back into the oppressive roles of the feminine mystique, or do they have some other hidden agenda? Wages for housework. Feminists are demanding laws requiring men to pay their wives housewife wages. Quote, In the United Kingdom and other countries, there's a movement, Wages for Housework, which advocates the idea that the husband should pay the wife for her services within the house, especially if she works full-time at home, doing the child rearing and cooking, cleaning, etc. That was quoting from Cher Height's 1989 book, Women in Love. Thus, feminist complaints against male housekeeping habits have nothing to do with the work itself, but with manufacturing excuses to force men to support women even more than they already do. Rather than granting credibility to their unwarranted complaints, we should suggest they find out why men marry. Do men marry for housekeeping services? Unlikely. A once-a-week maid service could be cheaper and more convenient, although personally, and I think most guys can relate to this, personally, I do all of my own housework. I don't need a wife or a maid for that. Do men marry for sex? No, actually. As Warren Farrell pointed out, marriage means infrequent and poorer quality sex for men. That was in Why Men Are the Way They Are, published in 1988. A twice-a-week whore would probably be more satisfying and cheaper. Essentially, feminists are trying to reduce women to the role of whores and housekeepers. If they succeed, men might be better off boycotting marriage. But men already pay their housewives something more valuable than money, time. Women who don't have a job outside the home have time to do things, time to read, study, think, create, compose music, invent, and build and reshape the world. Instead, many spend 6 hours a day doing a job that, quote, can be capably handled by an 8-year-old child, close quote. That was Betty Friedan, The Feminine Mystique. Women have never had it so good. That doesn't mean their lives can't be better, but turning them into subsidized housekeepers and whores with wages for wives is not the way to do it. The hypocrisy. Olympia, Washington, 2012. It should be obvious to unbiased readers that I was not denigrating the institution of marriage, but arguing against the goals of the Hate Male campaign, which include destroying marriage. Subscribe to the channel. Check out the other videos. For the Backlash at backlash.com. My name is Rod Van Mechelen.